Behind me, 2010 Acura MDX. We're gonna be replacing the timing belt and water pump. The hardest part of this whole job is getting that crank pulley bolt off. So let's start there. First, we'll jack the passenger side up, put it on jack stands, and pull our tire off. Our crank pulley bolt is a 19mm socket. I'm gonna buzz mine off with an impact, but if you don't have an impact, they make a special tool. It goes on right inside. It leaves you a hole to put a socket on the inside, and then you can hold the crank from moving while you bust it loose. I've used this before. I find when you're working on the ground like we are, it can still be quite a challenge to get it off. So I opt for a beefy impact and a beefy impact socket. Let's see what we can do. My battery was a little weak on that one, so I have it on the charger. Let's try our Ryobi. I don't have hopes for it, but we'll see. That didn't work. This battery's been charged back up for a little bit. Let's give it another whirl. Well, no dice. Looks like we're doing this manually. Like I was saying, they make this special tool. Let's give it a try. All right, you guys will be in my way a little, so let me just back you up. I'm gonna set it up and then position you in a better spot. This is how I have it set up. I have my 1/2" socket on that end, and then the tail end I have just resting on the CV axle. That'll hold it for me from spinning, and then I take my breaker bar with my 19 there and bust it loose. Okay, here we go. Let me move my breaker bar a little. All right, I'm just gonna put my foot here to give me some leverage. I'm just trying a different angle, different body angle, so I can get better leverage. Woo! Oh my gosh. I think that was it. I heard it. Unless that was my back cracking. So this is still a really valid tool. It works really well. Pull it out real quick. There we go. Perfect. Now that we got that crack loose, let's go up top. We'll work our way back down. All right, first thing, pull off our engine cover, flathead screwdriver, give it a twist and a twist. There should be just the two. Pull up and out. All right, next we want to pull off is our drive belt. We have our belt tensioner here. It'll be the upper pulley. We'll want to turn that counterclockwise. That'll loosen our belt tension. We'll pull the belt off and then we'll get that tensioner off. Let me show you what that looks like here. Belt tensioner should just be 2 bolts. We have 1 through bolt on the bottom pulley and then just a little side bolt right here. All right, going in with my belt removal tool, 14mm is that socket size. Now counterclockwise, that'll be pushing away from ourselves. Push away, there we go. Release some tension. Whew, that's hard. I need a longer tool, but I don't have one. All right, I have to improvise because my tool is a little too short. I cut the end off one day because I was working on a Chevy that the original tool was too long. If you purchase the original tool, you should have all the length you need. Mine's a little short, so I'm just gonna put an extension wrench on it. Should help me out a little. Okay, this should be able to just come off the power steering pump. There we go, and then back. Nice, not too bad. Just pull it off. There is this little AC line that's kind of right there. Might be able to move it just a little out of the way. There we go. Get my tool back. I'll take the belt out the rest of the way. Might just get it from underneath. Just push it through. There we go. Next, we want to get our engine mount bracket out of the way. Let me show you on the computer. We have these 2 top bolts and then 1 side bolt. It's saying this little ground strap to pull it out from here, but looking at it, it's easier to pull it out from here and just take this whole little bracket off and leave the ground strap on. Before we do that, we want to pull this out. It should just be a little lock tab here we pull out, and then this whole thing can just kind of come loose for us. Then we want to pull this little clip here, and then this can come up. That's just our reservoir. Pull this hose off and get our little coolant bottle out. That'll give us a lot more room And underneath, we want to put a jack underneath the oil pan with a little block of wood or a wadded up towel, like a thick bathroom towel underneath in between. That'll protect the pan from the metal of the jack. That way when we pull this off, our engine has something to rest on. So we'll pull on that little tab. This will come out just like that. Now there won't be a lot of flex, but it'll give us just a little room. You can take a flathead screwdriver. We'll pop this little clip out. There we go. Just gonna wiggle it. Come on, buddy. Get a pair of pliers. They make these style of pliers. That's for these little body clips. There we go. Then we'll pop on this, okay? Now this should also slide up. There, nice. And we have this little hose for our power steering, just kind of connects to it. We'll pull that off, and then this upper hose, give it a twist, and it should break free. Okay, it's not. So we'll just take a little angled pick, and we'll get in between the hose and the bottle. There we go. Sometimes it just sticks. You need to break it free. Come on. There. Flathead screwdriver and push on it. I don't know why this thing's being such a pain. It's a little hose. You know what I'm gonna do is just take the cap off. That's easier than fighting that little hose. All right, bottle comes out. Just have to kind of wiggle it through. Perfect. Pull this little hose off, and this is crazy how hard that's on there. I said the hardest part of the job was the crank pulley bolt. Maybe this is the hardest part of the job. Woo, got it. I'm gonna break loose our side bolt first. It should be a 17 mil. There, that wasn't too bad. If I can get it the rest of the way with my electric ratchet. Nice, we'll get that out, perfect. We have a 10 mil for our ground strap bracket. I'm just gonna put this bolt right back on that mount so I don't lose it. Our top bolts are 14 millimeter. There's one, get the other one. Yeah, there. Now we'll buzz them out. We should be able to just wiggle this out. There we go. Just kind of goes sideways and then out the back, or at least that's how mine did it. Okay, we got that bracket. Now that the engine mount is off, we can go ahead and pull out our jack. Let me show you just how much the engine's gonna drop when we remove our jack. It's not very much. All right, that's it. The engine is still supported by other engine mounts and the transmission. So this is perfectly fine, and we'll want that jack out anyway when we pull the water pump off. There'll be a lot of coolant draining out. We want a nice catch pan in place, and the jack gets in the way of that. With that said, I don't know if I mentioned it before, you can drain the coolant ahead of time. I typically don't, because we're pulling the water pump off. All that coolant is just gonna come out of the pump anyway. So no need to pre-drain it somewhere else when we're just gonna pull it out of the pump. Next thing we're gonna do is pull off the belt tensioner. I haven't pulled mine off yet. I'm gonna get that from underneath, and just those two bolts that I showed you in the manual. So for the tensioner, we have a 14 mil pulley bolt. Let me get that real quick. Gonna crack it loose. And we have a 12 millimeter bolt down below it. Let's see if I can get that with a deep. There we go. Sorry, where I have my lighting, it's creating a shadow for you guys. I'm gonna get a little extension. The lighting's probably worse, but we'll give it a shot. I'll buzz it out with my ratchet. And our main pulley bolt. The whole thing should come out the bottom. There we go. Next is our main engine mount bracket. That is easiest to get from underneath. Let me show you in the manual what we're dealing with. So this is what we have. We got 3 bolts going through on the side, and then 1 10 millimeter bolt going through in the top. The manual doesn't say, but you have to remove the power steering pump in order to get to this 10 millimeter bolt. It's not too bad, it's just 2 12 millimeter bolts. Let's do that first. All right, 12 millimeter bolts. One you can see, it's on this back side. Just crack it loose for now. And the other one is right under the pulley. You can feel it with your hand. Get a little light in there so I can see. There it is. Okay. I'll just buzz them out the rest of the way. And we just need to get it up and out of the way. just so we get access to that one bolt. There we go. Let me show you where that is. So just that one bolt right there on top. We can get that with a 1/4-inch ratchet and a bitty socket. So here we are underneath. You can see 2 bolts really easily. The 3rd bolt is inside this little cavity here. That's gonna be the hardest bolt for us to get. We'll start with that one. We can take a 14 mil shallow on a ratchet. Now that the engine is lowered as much as it can, we can get this to kind of just slide right in, just like that. There we go. So we got it on there. I'll go ahead and crack that loose. Okay. Now we don't want to back it out too much because then we'll back ourselves up against the frame. So we'll pull this out. There we go. So I have a 14 mil and a 1/4 inch. I'm gonna get that up there and see what that can do for me. There we go. I want to say that's as far as it'll go. That's what I want to say. All right, I'm gonna get the other 2. These are a lot easier to get. Okay, the top one come out pretty easy by hand. That bottom one is, almost feels like it has a Loctite or something on it. Okay, there we go. Let me just work on this bottom one a little more. Okay, that's it. I jumped ahead a little. Before this can come off, our plastic covers have to come off. So we'll get that next. So I'm just gonna put a little threads on 2 of these so it doesn't drop when we take our covers off. Before we pull our covers off, we're gonna set our timing. Cylinder 1, top dead center. We have this big triangle here, and it's the 2nd notch in our crank pulley. Then scroll down, we have a little window on our front timing cover, and then a little notch on that window that will line up with the notch on our cam gear. And that should say number 1 on it. Our window, let me turn the light on. It's this right here. We just pull this back, just that little cover. We might need to get a little mirror that we can see inside, but that's our window here. So let me do that off camera and I'll show you what that looks like all lined up. All right, I marked the 2nd notch. Hopefully you can see it lined up with the triangle. So we're lined up down here. And then up here, hopefully I can get you in a good spot. Hopefully you can see in there, we are also lined up with cylinder number 1. If you are off by 180 degrees, then the crank will be right, but you'll see a number 5 here instead of a number 1. So we want to make sure that this cam is number 1, not number 5. If it is number 5, that's okay. Just turn the crank 1 full revolution, line that notch back up, and you should be at number 1. All right, let's pull the crank off so we can get our bottom timing cover off as well. It shouldn't be pressed on. It should come off relatively easy. There we go. The covers are just a series of 10mm bolts. I'll whip those off real quick. All right, now we got the covers off. Let's see what we can do with this thing. So I think these can come all the way out. But I don't think the middle one can. It needs to come out a little more. So let me get my 1/4 inch. Let's see what we can do about bringing this out a little more. Okay, but now my ratchet's kind of stuck a little. Oh, got it. There we go. Well, that wasn't too bad. Let's pull our tensioner off. We can get our belt off. Our tensioner lives right here. There's one easy bolt to get to, 10mm, and then a little tricky bolt, but still a 10mm. The tricky bolt is behind our oil filter housing, so I wonder if maybe just this oil pressure sensor gets removed. The manual doesn't say. Let me pull this connector off real quick. There we go. So I think if we just pulled this sensor off, that'd be all the room we need. So this is gonna be a 24mm. It's a pretty standard oil pressure sensor socket. There we go. Got it. So it should just come right off. There we go. Yeah, perfect. That's what we needed. We just got 2 10mm. Perfect. Now we got 2 10mm down here. Let me redirect you. And that's just a timing belt securing plate. We'll pull this little thing off. Pull this plate off, 10mm. Before we pull this bracket off, we want to mark the belt. So we'll mark just 2 dots on the belt and then 1 dot on the crank. We'll transfer these marks over to the new belt. We'll do the same thing to both of the cams. On this front cam, there is a mark on the tooth, so we'll just use that mark. Then we'll mark the belt side to side. That'll lay over. And then I'm gonna put an F right here. So that's gonna show me that this is the front cam. So when I line up all the marks, I can make this the front cam. Then we just have the back one to do. So it's kind of hard to see, but there's also a mark on the cam. We'll just put it here like that. And then we will mark the belt, give it a line across the belt. Let me mark the front a little better. There we go. All right, perfect. So when we transfer all these over to the new belt, we'll just line up all our marks. All right, from underneath, I'm gonna pull that bracket off and we'll get this belt out. Go, take it off the cam. Perfect. All right, so now we're gonna start working on our water pump right here. We can pull off this pulley, 14 mil. This feels like it has Loctite too. All right, I think that's it. It's a really long bolt. Okay, got it. We'll pull off our tensioner pulley. No Loctite on that one. Now from here, our water pump is a series of 10 millimeter bolts all the way around the perimeter. So I'm gonna move you guys, because once I start pulling all these out and getting this, we're gonna lose a lot of coolant. I'm gonna get you out of the way. All right, all the bolts are out. I'm gonna get it from up above so I don't get splashed on. I'm just gonna tap on it, break the seal. There we go. Dripping coolant. Just let that drip. There it is, water pump done. For our new pump, we're just gonna make sure we have the gasket in and it's seated all the way. It's not gonna fall out. We'll go ahead and slide it on. We'll finger tighten all the bolts, then we'll get a torque spec. Slide our new pump in. There we go. Snug those up. These are 8.8 foot-pounds, which ends up being 105 inch-pounds. Now I'm gonna spray everything down with some brake clean because we don't want this coolant on our new belt. While we're waiting for the brake clean to dry, let's go ahead and transfer over our marks to the new belt. Let me move this so you can see it. So we have our marks here. We're just gonna mark right here and here. Now when we move the belt around, we want the belt to be as straight as possible. We want each tooth to line up with each tooth. So we just go around, we'll hold on to it as we keep going. Teeth are staying in sync, lined up. Okay, now we're here with these two teeth. We'll give those a mark. Okay, now we'll just keep rolling, making sure everything stays lined up. Okay, so we are right back, they're lined up. So I missed one, and I think that's because it was on the top. So let's go back, because I didn't mark the teeth. I remember now, I marked the top of it. So that's that on there. Okay, right there, I marked the top. So let me get that top marked. Okay, I'll just mark this whole piece. Okay, there we go. And then I'll just double make sure that all our marks are marked correctly. Okay, those two line up, and then those two line up. Perfect. So all our marks line up. That wasn't too bad. That'll make it easy putting this new belt on. So now let's go under, we'll put on our tensioner pulley and our idler pulley. All right, we'll put on our new idler pulley. Now we're gonna put red Loctite on our threads. That's what it had on it when we pulled it off. So we'll just reinstall it. There we go. Snug that up. Now this is torqued to 33 foot-pounds. So we'll move you around, we'll put on our tensioner pulley. Now on the tensioner pulley, this goes in the back. So if it fell out, it just goes right in the back, up against the vehicle. Put that in. This does not get any Loctite. All right, let's get a torque. And this is 19 foot-pounds. Now we can route our belt. I'll show you the diagram on the computer. So this is our routing. We'll start with the crankshaft first. So we'll line up our marks on the crankshaft, then we'll bring it around our idler, and then we'll line up our marks on the front camshaft. Bring it under our water pump, line up those marks on the back, and we should have all our slack on our tensioner side. So I'll do that off camera, then I'll show you when it's all finished. All right, let me show you a couple of tricks. We're just lining up the marks we already made. So our mark for the crank, we got it lined up. Then take your belt, squeeze it like this, and then go ahead and put this plate on. That'll prevent this from coming off while you're continuing to route the belt. So lock in that bottom with this plate. Then we'll route it around here, and then we'll come up. Let me go up to the top. This is the front cam. You can see we are lined up on the front cam. So a trick to get that lined up is we'll take a 17 mil socket and a breaker bar, and we'll just put it right here on the socket. We can turn this cam clockwise just enough to get this lined up, and then we'll route the belt over this cam and we'll tuck it under right here, and that'll lock it in. Then we can move the cam back counterclockwise to get this side nice and taut, and that'll lock it in so it won't come back out. We'll route it down underneath the water pump, and we'll do the exact same thing to this back one. It's kind of hard to see. We got that lined up, and you can do the same thing. Manipulate the cam, just bring it back clockwise a little, get that lined up, tuck that belt underneath, route it all the way around, and there's another spot on the other side that it gets tucked underneath. Then you can bring the cam back counterclockwise to keep it taut on this side, and then the belt won't come off because it's tucked underneath, so that's locked in place. And then lastly, you can bring it around your tensioner. And that's it. Hopefully that makes sense. Really, all we're doing is just lining up our marks, and that's it. Now we can go ahead, we'll put on our tensioner, get that torqued down, and then we'll pull the grenade pin. All right, we'll pull this back off. I just put it on so I didn't get any dirt and stuff in the oil port. We'll throw in our new tensioner. Just gonna put the top bolt in first. There we go. Snug those down. These are 8.7 foot-pounds or 104 inch-pounds. So now we have this thing we're gonna try to put in. And we want to make sure that that inset bolt, wherever it is, right there, we want that in right off the bat. We won't be able to put that in later. Then we just slide this up and in place. Just having trouble getting that bolt to drop in its hole. Now these two outer bolts are different sizes. The smaller one goes down below. So it's just hitting on that wiring harness. Remember that 10 mil bolt we took off underneath the power steering pump? That little harness was just getting in our way. So we are good to go. Just gonna get some threads started, finger tight. See them up here. Then with my 1/4 inch, we'll just suck these down. All right, so I have the upper two tight. We're gonna pull this one back out because I forgot that it had Loctite on it when we took it off. So I'm just gonna put Loctite back on it, just a little. There we go. All right, just a little bit of Loctite on the threads. Toss it back in. And I'll snug this down and then we'll get a torque spec. These are 33 foot-pounds. All right, those are the two outsides. Let me see if I can get my inset one. Yeah, it looks like it, sweet. Sweet, now let's throw our timing covers on. All right, before we forget, if you haven't already, we'll go ahead, torque these down. I don't have a torque spec, but good and snug. These are about the same size as our tensioner bolts, so I'm sure 105 inch-pounds would be just fine for those, but use your judgment. Next, we have this cap. Hopefully you can see, but the cap has this bend in it. We want this bend facing out. So we'll put that on the key. Perfect. We'll also go ahead and throw on our oil pressure sensor. Put that right on the top. Now it has a reusable gasket. We'll just make sure that that's in place. We'll reuse it. There we go. Snug it down. There we go, just good and snug. And then we'll plug that connector back in. There we go. So I think that's it. Double check everything, then we'll go ahead and put our covers on. Let me get a torque spec for that. Those are 8.7 foot-pounds. I'll go ahead and put them on off camera. All right, we got our covers on. I put the bottom one on first, and then the top locked into the bottom one. Now we'll go ahead and put our crank pulley on. We're just gonna snug up our crank pulley bolt because we want to turn the engine 2 full revolutions, and then line up our timing marks down here one more time, and then we'll double check that our top is still number 1 lining up, and then we also want to check the back, and I'll show you that. So let's go ahead and put on our crank pulley first. Should just slide over the keyway. All right, just like that. Put our bolt in. We're just gonna snug it down. So we're gonna turn the crankshaft 2 full revolutions. While we're turning it, we wanna make sure that nothing's binding up, that this can spin all the way around without any hiccups. Now, if you have your spark plugs in, you will have to overcome some compression from time to time. That's normal. And there's 1 revolution. Okay, coming back around. Let me get my light on it. Okay, that is almost it. Just about there. Close enough. Let's take our plugs out and double check our cams. Let me see if we can see in there. All right, that is cylinder number 1. Sorry if you can't see it. It's kind of hard to get in there. But cylinder number 1 is lined up right on that notch. So that's perfect. Now let's do the back. So I don't know that I can get a camera back in here. Not sure if you can see, but we are lined up on that notch as well. Now there's no number in the back, just the notch. Just in case my camera doesn't show up very well. This is what we're looking for in the front. That little number 1 with the notch, and then there's a little protrusion on our cover, and that protrusion and that notch line up. So that's the front. That's what we did at the beginning, and then this is the rear, just that notch. There's no number, just a notch with that little protrusion. Make sure that lines up as well. Now having something like this works really well, getting in there with a flashlight and you can see it pretty well yourself. Okay, we have verified timing. Next thing we want to do is get this power steering pump back on. Don't forget that 10mm bolt underneath. We'll actually do that first, just snug. All it's doing is holding on this little plastic harness retainer. So we'll get that, then we'll get this. I'll give you the torque spec for that. After that, I think it's just our tensioner pulley, our belt, and then tighten up the crank pulley for real. So we're getting really close. And we'll just finesse our power steering pump on. It's easiest to get this top back bolt first. I'll kind of line it all up. We can get this front bottom bolt. Get a couple threads. Snug this down. These are 16 foot-pounds. All right, let's go down. We'll throw our belt tensioner on, then we can throw our belt on. All right, we'll finesse this in. There we go. All right, got some threads started. We'll just snug this down. So we won't really snug it yet. While it's loose, we'll put in our little bolt. Okay, that's started. Now we'll go ahead and snug this down. And we'll get our little 12mm snug down. All right, let's get a torque spec. All right, the 12mm is 16 foot-pounds. Do that first. And then our main bolt is 33 foot-pounds. All right. Let's throw our belt on. This is the belt routing if you need it. Go ahead, pause here. All right, let's get this engine mount back in. We want to jack up the engine again, just a little. We'll get this fitted in. There we go. It's kind of interesting how it fishes in there from this backside over here. Try to get our through bolt through first. Oop. Might have the engine up a little too high. Bring it back down. There we go. Get these 2 top bolts in. So the engine is all the way down. I don't have the jack under it anymore. And that's just the way it wanted to fall into place. So kind of play with that. See if you need it up or down. Just snug these down. Get our through bolt tightened up. And our top 2 are 33 foot-pounds. Okay, then our bottom one is 40. And then we don't want to forget our ground strap. I just realized some of this you probably couldn't see, so I just moved the camera a little. Here's our ground strap. And just good and snug on this. Let's go ahead and put this back. Actually, we'll get it out of the way and we'll put our bottle back first. Get our bottle to slide down there. Go. And that should go right into that slot, the holder that it came out of. There we go. And this can go back in. There we go. And this little hose can go back on. Perfect. We got this little hose. Put that back on. Okay. Got our clip here. Okay, up here is finished. Let's tighten up our crank pulley. All right, here's the procedure. So anything with the black dot, we want to lubricate with new engine oil. You see here, we have the bolt head where it goes in between the washer and the bolt head. We want to get a little bit of oil there and then a little bit of oil on the threads. We want to lubricate that with new engine oil. Nothing else gets lubricated, just cleaned off for reinsertion. Then come down. So our initial torque, I don't know if you can read that, 47 foot-pounds. And then we want to go an additional 60 degrees. So let's do that together. I'm going to pull this out. So we want a little bit of oil in here. There we go. And just rub it around so it spreads around a little. And we want just a little bit of oil here. It doesn't take a lot. Just a little coat of oil. I'm afraid I'm gonna squirt. There we go. Squirt too much. Just rub that around. Just got a rag, I'm gonna wipe off any excess on the bolt head and stuff. There we go. Okay, now put it in. Just snug it down. Wipe off any excess on this outside. All right, let's try to get 47. There we go. Okay, so just the engine compression is enough to get us to 47. Now how we're gonna get our additional 60? We know what a 90 looks like, so we'll put a mark right here on the bolt, right here on the washer, and then right here on the crank pulley. So that's straight up and down. 90 would be at 3 o'clock. And we can also estimate what a 45 would be. That would be in between our 90 and our 0 would be 45. So we could put a little mark where our 45 might be, where our 90 might be. So 60 is gonna be in between our 45 and our 90. So somewhere about there. So now we'll just turn this with our impact until we get to right here, 60 degrees. And that'll be a pretty good rough estimate. If you don't have an impact, we'll go ahead and just put our tool back in here and then crank it down with a breaker bar. See what our Ryobi can do. Yeah, did the trick. Let me show you a little closer. Hopefully you can see our marks. We have our mark here on our crank pulley bolt. Almost lines up with our 60 degree. We know this is 90, that's roughly 45, so somewhere in between our 90 and 45 is our 60. Now I did go a little bit past with my bolt, but honestly, that is perfectly okay. Let me turn the light off, see if you can see better the mark on the bolt. Whoop, wrong button. No, that's terrible. Okay, yeah, unfortunately, that's the best it can get. All right, so that's how we do it. Now we go ahead, throw our tire back on, lower the vehicle, and we'll start it up. All right, here we go. We're just gonna start it up for a second because I haven't added any coolant to it yet. Let's hear it roar. All right, that's it, sounded good. Now let's go through a bleeding procedure. So here is the bleeding procedure. I'll leave it on the screen. Go ahead and pause here and you can run through it. All right, that is it. I believe the hardest part of this whole job is getting that hose off of the coolant bottle and getting the crank pulley bolt off. Usually I am able to get it off with an impact. They make a special socket that's just a really fat socket just for Honda and Acura bolts. Usually I'm able to get it off with that impact. But for some reason this was on just a little more solid than usual. No big deal. They also make that other tool. You want a nice sized breaker bar? I'll link all the tools and parts in the description that I use to get this done. But there are those two options, impact or manually. Once you have that off, the rest of it, not too challenging. The engine mount bracket, I think the ticket there, break it loose with your 14 mil 3/8 ratchet, and then get it the rest of the way out, that one that's recessed, get it the rest of the way out with a 1/4 inch shallow socket. I think that works really good. You can get it all the way out. And then making your marks on the belt really helps with installation. Other than that, not too bad. If you have any comments, questions, post down below. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. See you on the next one.